Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the At Shoe Dietetics live chat series. My name is Long Lee, and I am a senior lecturer in dietetics at Sheffield Hallam University and the host for this live chat series, where we feature a series of topics of different clinical and educational topics, and also with esteemed dietitians, nutritionists, and other healthcare professionals. And today we are going to talk about Ramadan and especially how it can be relevant to the nutrition and dietetic professionals. I'm so glad we've got a really wonderful panel with me this afternoon. And I must say, we also have participants from all over the world. And obviously, this is from Sheffield Hallam University, but we also have students from other universities in England as well as Ireland and other countries. So welcome everybody. And this live chat is streaming and broadcasting on YouTube as well. So for people who are on YouTube, welcome and to this live chat. And let me introduce my panel, my guest. So on my bottom left-hand corner is Nusrat and Kausar. So Nusrat is an award-winning dietitian, and she's the clinical director of primary care dietitians, where she supports dietitians working in different PCNs across England. And Nusrat is also a director of NutriBites, where she has a keen interest in reducing health inequalities in the UK through patient and HCP education. Nusrat is an advocate for the profession and a part of the British Dietetic Association, England Board, and the BDA Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register Board. She is the chair of the BDA Sports and Exercise Diabetes subgroup. As part of the group, she's the host of the Type 1's Talk Sports podcast, which I believe you can either find on Spotify and podcast as well. And Nusrat is also a specialist visiting lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University and contributes to the teaching of our dietetic students. And I must say, this year is actually the 10-year anniversary of me knowing Nusrat, and we actually started to work together in 2014 for the BDA Yorkshire branch, and then we've become really close friends since then, have worked on different projects, and it's really a privilege to work with Nusrat actually. And one question that I regularly ask Nusrat is, I don't know how you have so much energy and so energetic, because I feel you're constantly working, but also you're constantly exercising as well, doing different type of exercise and volunteering. So I really admire you for that, Nusrat. On
Thank
my
you.
bottom right-hand corner is Fareeha J. And Fareeha is also an award-winning dietitian who has worked as a diabetes specialist for the past 6 years. She's a freelance dietitian with a special interest in South Asian diets and provides specialist advice to South Asians across the globe. She is highly passionate about providing the best available nutrition advice to people with a South Asian background, which is what led her to develop the South Asian Eat Well Guide, which I believe many of you have seen, and we regularly use it in our teaching, that South Asian Eat Well Guide. She also wants to empower South Asian women on their health, build awareness around women's health conditions, and bring them to the forefront of discussion. Fareeha has a social media following from over 99 countries across the globe. She has built up a following of more than 700,000 on all social media platforms. I mean, that is impressive, Fareeha, and you must let me know how you do that, because one of my aims is always, I say I want to become an influencer, and one of the things is I need followers, so you must tell me of what your secrets are, Fareeha. And I have the pleasure to actually meet Fareeha in person last year in Birmingham for the BDA Awards, where both of us were nominated for the BDA Social Media Influencer of the Year. And so that was a fun night, wasn't it, Fareeha? So thank you so much for joining us today. And then on my right, I need to think which hand is this one. On my right-hand corner is Zakia Abdul Haq. So, Zakia is our second year dietetic student at Sheffield Hallam University. Her cultural background is Ghanaian from West Africa. She has been living with a family in England since 2009. Prior to relocating to the UK, she worked for over 5 years as a nutrition officer in Ghana and on public health projects both in Ghana and in collaboration with other researchers from other African countries, the UK and Europe. She actually completed her PhD in public health in the UK as well. And I had a chat with Zakia last week, and that was so impressive, her journey, really. And I feel really I should have a separate live chat with you, Zakia, because it was just impressive and the amount of experiences you had, and that's inspiring. And on my left-hand corner, and last but not least, is Manaal Said. And Manaal is a dietetic graduate from Sheffield Hallam University. And I must say congratulations to Manaal because she officially passed the FSC course and will be registered with the HCPC soon and become a registered dietitian. And she's already secured a job in Birmingham. So I'm sure you look forward to your new job, Manaal. And so Manaal is actually Indian, but Dubai is where she calls home. And being raised in this dynamic city has enriched her cultural aware experiences and shaped her outlook on life. She has a keen eye for capturing moments and loves taking pictures, especially where exploring cozy cafes and enjoying leisurely walks. Her vision moving forward in her career is to integrate her dietetic knowledge with the guiding principles of her faith, nurturing a holistic approach to health and wellness that honors both physical well-being and spiritual nourishment. And I cannot wait to see how you fly high in this dietetic profession now. So welcome to all four of you guys. And I was saying to this panel, I was so glad because just reading your bios that just showcased how diverse our panel is today. I mean, all of you share the same faith, but obviously you come from different countries and different cultural background. And I think that's really good where we can really talk about this topic from different angles. So I'm really glad and I hope our people who are watching this live chat will find this as well. Now, without further ado, so today's topic is Ramadan. And we're going to explore Ramadan from a nutritional point of view. And my first question, or my first for all of you guys is, can you explain the significance of Ramadan in the Islamic faith? I mean, it's month time, so it's not short, it's actually quite long. Why is it significant? Why we talk about Ramadan all the time every year? And if we can start with you, Nusrat.
Oh, thank you for the introductions, Long. Very exciting. And yes, I can't believe it's been 10 years. So yeah, no, in terms of Ramadan, it's quite a significant month. So it's the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, but it's really important for Muslims across the globe. In terms of one of the first reasons was the Quran, so our holy book, which is based upon all our followings and everything we do, and is the way of living for us, was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Ramadan. So that's one of the key reasons it's quite an important month. That was also the month where fasting was introduced, and fasting is also one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So there's 5 pillars to following in being a good Muslim, and as part of that, one of them is Ramadan, so fasting in Ramadan. And then the last bit is also, it just helps increase your devotion to the Muslim faith. So it's a key time to remove food and remove all the sort of worldly things that you might focus on, to allow you to just focus on your faith and find yourself and find God again and sort of reconnect with your faith. So it's quite an important month. And obviously fasting, taking that food away, can have lots of implications in the current, climate of work, your food, your nutrition, and various other things. But Islamically, it's a really important month for us. What do others think? Is there any other things?
Yeah, Fareeha and all.
Nusrat said it all. So yeah, the significance of Ramadan is that because I think for Muslims, when we think of Ramadan, we're usually thinking about abstaining from food and not drinking, but there is so much more. There's the spiritual aspect to it. It is the time when I think it's a time of repentance as well, and reflection. So reflect what you've been doing all year and how you can, what were the faults and how you can improve yourself. So not just focusing on that. So am I a good person? And also, if you're fasting, you can also understand that what people around the world, what's happening as far as when there is hunger, thirst. So just relating yourself to the other people of the world as well. So there's much more than not eating and drinking.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important for people to know. It's not just a month of fasting, really, and fasting is just a way for people to focus, as you said, and that's right, to focus on the faith and the religion, and for people to really to reflect on different aspects of life, I guess. And is there anything, Zaki or Manal, you want to add for this question?
Yeah, I thought I'd share this like fact. So the word Ramadan is derived from the word Ramad, and essentially Ramad means burning, so like intense heat. And so essentially that means Ramadan is a month of burning away your sins so that you are in a state of repentance, of reflection, and that allows you to kind of sit back and kind of look at how you are and where you want to get spiritually. It makes you feel grateful for the things you have, and it's just kind of like starting anew in that sense. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Zakia, anything?
Yeah, I think my colleagues have said it all. So not only is eating restricted, but our sight, the hearing, the tongue, and the mind are all under strict control. So for instance, not only vain talk, but too much talk is avoided so that there is greater concentration on the remembrance of Allah and reflection on his attributes. So he has about 99 attributes. So this is the time for us to really reflect on the different attributes of God.
Yeah, and the word reflection has been mentioned quite a few times by you guys, and I think it's quite important, isn't it? And probably all of you have mentioned, fasting or restraining from food during this month's time. So what is actually the fasting rules for Ramadan, including the main meals in Ramadan? Anyone would like to?
So I'll start and then, you all can chip in. The main rule is we're not eating anything from right just before sunset till, sunrise, just before sunrise till sunset. So that's the time period. We're not eating or drinking anything or smoking or chewing gum. So thinking about anything which is going into your mouth. So you have to be mindful of that. Usually when we are fasting, there is this belief that you can drink. So that is something which you have to be really mindful that nothing has to go into your mouth when you are fasting. That's the major rule. Apart from that, this is how when I speak to my children as well. It's not just when you the fast of your mouth, but the words which come out of your mouth, nice words, being nice, being kind, not using the bad language. This is how it's supposed to be. Can't think of anything else. If anyone else can please chip in as well.
I mean, that's very interesting. And I guess like in the medical term, if you document, probably it's near by mouth, isn't it? It's like during the day. And I didn't know that even, words coming out of your mouth has
Yes.
to be kind words. I mean, I guess probably all year round, all words coming out from my mouth should you really be kind, shouldn't it?
Exactly.
But particularly
Yeah.
during that month time and where people are reflecting on themselves. So yeah, anything else people like to add in?
It also includes medications. So I think, coming from a clinical background, if you're thinking about your patients, they won't be able to take any medications in that time either, including, I think you can have subcutaneous injections, but if someone was on like insulin, for example, ideally they would need to take that, before the fast or after the fast. So for people with diabetes, they may need to think about how they would manage, or anyone with a long-term condition taking multiple medicines. The rules, I guess, from a fasting point of view is if you are able to fast, you should fast. So if you're not able to fast, if you're elderly, if you're pregnant, if you're unwell, you don't need to fast. So that's not a rule. There's things you can do that you can sort of make up for missing fasts. There's some rules, for example, women can't fast when they're in their menstrual periods, but they can make their fast up after if they're well enough to do so. So, there's sometimes a rule that as an imposed thing that people feel like they want to fast because it's such a nice month. It's such a great month to collect like really good benefits. You want all those good points on your books, and the more you do in Ramadan, the more points you sort of get for being a good Muslim. So more people want to fast. So often, it's a choice whether you do fast or not. So I do find that can be sometimes an internal struggle, but there are set rules, that if you are unwell and you're not safe to, so that is definitely something as well.
And any other people who are exempt from fasting then?
So people with any type of health condition. So just like Nusrat said, we're thinking about diabetes, we're thinking about people with renal conditions, we're thinking about people with eating disorders. So not necessarily if you cannot see a certain condition, that doesn't mean that you do not have that health condition. And the list can go on and on. It depends on how, even when we're talking about diabetes, what stage of diabetes you are in. And then, speaking to your health professionals, whether you are in that position to fast or not fast, but remembering that thinking over that, yes, these are the health conditions, and yes, we can be exempt, and not being stressed about this, that we have to fast. And I think there is this thin line between religion and culture which comes up here. It's more of a cultural burden that I have to fast, rather than I have to fast because of my connection with God, or because this is part of my religion.
Definitely, that's such a good point. And we'll come back to that medical point later on as well.
Also, children just to add, children, if you're before puberty, don't need to fast. So that's not a rule that, everyone from birth. So it's anyone who sort of hit puberty needs to fast. And then also pregnant women don't have to fast, or breastfeeding women don't have to either. So there are some other rules, but generally those are the big ones.
Yeah. And even if someone is on a journey, because the burden of journeying, you are exempted from fasting. You can make it up later when you arrive at your destination.
So if you're traveling long, so if you were on a long journey, if you traveled from Australia to England for 24 hours.
Yeah, because that would be really difficult, wouldn't it? It's like traveling and fasting, and I can't even imagine that myself. Now, obviously you mentioned about, it's fasting during the day, and I just noticed actually the Ramadan starts quite early this year compared to last year. It starts on Sunday this year, isn't it? From the 10th of March for is it until the 9th of April or 10th of April? 9th of April. And because last year it started on 23rd of March. So then I guess because we're still in sort of winter time, and then that means the daytime is shorter. So it starts earlier this year, but the daytime is shorter, which means the fasting period would be slightly shorter than last year, wouldn't it?
Yes, and I calculated, I think last 10 fasts, the clock will change. So the fasts will become longer again. So initially it will start around, the sunset will be around 6:30, 6:35, but then it will turn to 7:35 and 7:40. So then that will start becoming later then.
As well, yeah. But I think initially it would be slightly shorter, but then it will become longer.
Yeah, we get used to it then.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, as I said, obviously, all of our panel members, the four of you guys, you come from very different background, and so are there any differences in terms of dietary practices during Ramadan in the countries you originate from? Shall we start actually with you, Zakia?
Yeah, okay. So in the teaching of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he quoted that when one is fasting, you should break your fast with dates. So but if you cannot find dates, then use water, and water is purifying. So in Ghana, most Muslims serve dates on their iftari table, and also at the mosques, to keep this tradition, because dates provide a burst of energy after fasting. And so in addition to this, Ghanaians, we have different traditional drinks and then beverages to break the fasting. So these include millet and corn-based cold drinks and hot porridges. For example, during iftar, most people drink cold mash fanti kinki and then millet porridge with kose. So kose is known as a bean, kind of bean cake that people add to these beverages, and it's very nutritious. It is also a tradition in Ghana to break fast with seasonal fruits. So we have fruits like watermelon and mangoes, fresh coconut water, pawpaw, pineapples, bananas, guava. So all these have similar revitalizing effects, which helps rehydrate and reduces the possibility of overindulgence, especially in the main meals. And then the main dishes that we have mainly include a variety made with meat and fish and vegetables. So these Ghanaian dishes include foods like jollof rice. We have wache, which is rice and beans cooked together. And then fufu. Fufu is made from cassava and plantain. Pampu, kenke, tozaki, made from corn and cassava. And these are usually served with lots of fresh soups and then stews. So people do enjoy a variety of meals during Ramadan.
And it's very based on the sort of the cultural food, isn't it? Rather than, I think you mentioned about, breaking a fast with 3 dates and not 3 days, sorry, dates and water. And I think that probably is shared in almost like the same culture because it's from the Islam Bible, isn't it? The Quran, so what you need to have. So I think that's probably similar, dates and water. But then you also mentioned about different cultural foods, and that's very, very interesting, Zakia. And obviously you've moved to England since 2009. Do you think things have changed for you?
Yeah, so sometimes you don't get some of the ingredients you would need to prepare these traditional dishes. But we have African shops. At times you get some of them, but not everything. But we do make adaptations to cook these foods we enjoy most, especially the fufu. You are not able to get the very fresh cassava and plantain to pound it the way they would do it in Ghana. But then we are able to get and mix it in the powder and also have similar foods here that we eat.
Thinking of all the ways you can to adapt and good. And Manaal, and obviously you did your undergraduate in India and then you grew up in Dubai and then you studied your dietetics in England. So you've actually lived in quite different countries and it's quite interesting to hear from you actually to say what's the difference in terms of dietary practices then?
So like Zakia said, generally everyone across the globe shares the same faith, break their fast with dates and water, that stays the same. I would say there's a lot of similarity than differences. So you'd see a lot of like rice-based dishes, a lot of meats, things like that. But I guess it depends on like culturally what your practices are. If you come from a family that tends to have a lot of dishes or a small set of dishes and how you go about as a family, but living in 3 different countries for different reasons, study, work, home, etc. I think there were a lot of things that I kind of like picked and then kind of included in my diet and for fasting, and then there are things that I kind of like for example, at home, we usually just break our fast with dates and then we have like a bowl of fruit and then we go for our evening prayer. So we come back and then we kind of have the rest of our food. So that would range, because I'm Indian, we have things like cutlet, we have things like samosas, and then we have like our main dish, which could be anything from chapatis to like rice, and then a gravy. And I find that that still stays the same in Middle Eastern food because they also have things like sambosa, and then like majboos, lamb rice, things like that. So it kind of still stays the same, but I guess it's the spices and techniques that you use. And then they also have this added element of soups, which I think is really good for hydration. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've seen and
Yeah,
experienced so
yeah.
far.
So again, it's quite based on, the local sort of dietary habits, doesn't it? And if we come to you, Fareeha, um,
Before I start, I must say that Zakia, I'm really impressed with how the fasts are open, how healthy it is. Because again, we're talking about differences of culture here. Yes, all Muslims will open their fast with dates, but then again, the cultural differences I think are really clear over here. Because coming from a Pakistani origin, and I do a lot of consultations with people from the Pakistani background. Just today morning, two of my consultations were people were asking about how to adapt a healthy Ramadan this year, and the basic cultural difference is that fried food is part of Pakistani culture, and pakoras is something which are the bhajis, and if I ask my patients, not clients, not to have them, they curse me. They are literally angry that why is she asking me not to have fried food. So there's this big difference when Manal, you were talking about soups, and Zakia, you were talking about fruit and all. It's completely different. But then again, just like Manal said, that it's really every person, every family will be different. So some families would have an elaborate iftar, while the others will have, one dish, but that will be fried. They will, after the days, they'll have something fried, then they'll say their prayers, and then they'll have the main meal. It's really different for each family, but I would say the focus for people from the Pakistani origin is fried food and extremely sweet food as part of the desserts are concerned. And in usual days, probably desserts won't be made every day, but in Ramadan, desserts is a must. High sugary, high fatty desserts.
wow, that sounds actually a reward for myself as well after a long day of fast. If I do a fast, I should probably, if I start to open something, I do want something that's high in fat and very sweet. And then Fareeha, you mentioned, your clients and got angry when you ask them not to have this or have this. What would your reaction be?
So this is what dietetics is all about. We have to adjust our advice according to their needs and preferences as well. I can say that stop having pakoras, don't have them. Will they listen to me? So we with them, I decide that, okay, like the lady this morning to whom I was having consultation, we decided that she will be having 2 pakoras at every iftar and no more than that. So that was something which we decided upon. If I had said that don't have it or you can't have it, that would have never been a positive approach,
No,
because
no.
she's fasting. That's her reward at the end of the day. And then if we want to go further ahead, it's also about which Manal, I guess, mentioned, was about how we're preparing the foods. So again, there is this one option of frying your pakoras and frying your samosas. And there's this new gadget these days, the air fryer, which is being quite discussed in use these days. And thinking about, and this is what I speak to my patients and clients about, that how they can enjoy their cultural foods and have them in a healthier way. So thinking about options at how can they air fry it and how can they bake their foods rather than frying it. So I never say, no, you cannot have your cultural
No.
foods.
Yeah, and that's quite the word reward you mentioned is very important, and working with the client as well. So it's never about not having any food, but finding the best way, the best approach to actually enjoying food, but also um, can accommodate the health needs as well. Absolutely. Anything you'd like to add there, Nusrat?
No, I think Fareeha covered the Pakistani culture quite well there. I was going to say, similar to what Zakia said, it's usually, really nice tropical fruits if it's in the summer. Obviously, in the UK, you can get pretty much hold of anything. I was born in the UK into the Pakistani diet, and we're quite an odd family in the sense that we do try and really limit our fried foods to once a week, and we just have one main and some fruit. So it's just an odd one, but I think we're definitely the 10%. It's not everyone. But yeah, we'd normally have some fruit juices that you would drink after the dates and the water, and then your main meal is usually chapati or rice. And then, like Fareeha says, usually some milky dessert or some sweet dessert. But as I say, I think we are in the odd minority that we would tend to have just a normal typical day and then sort of limit our pakoras and samosas to once a week, or some chicken meat or something, but that's not the norm, I would say. But as Fareeha says, I think it's quite culturally, our foods are quite rich. I know in Dubai and the Arabic foods, it's really nice to see you get a lot more rice, a lot more meat or chicken, fish, don't you? That's quite a bit healthier. But I think fruit is commonly eaten and fruit juice drinks. And in the UK, I think more people have moved towards the sugar-free. So I think that's nice, because I think more and more before, people would have lots of sugary drinks, which aren't very useful, the fizzy drinks. I think having a movement towards the zero added and sugar-free versions with the new rules has been quite good. But like I say, I think I am in the odd minority, but for the Pakistani culture in the UK. Thanks.
But that just shows, even from the same culture, it could be different, couldn't it? Depends on each household. And that's exactly how dietitians work with different individual and adapt to their own need. And I think that just highlights the importance of that. And I was saying to Nusrat and Fareeha before we started the chat, is I want to try to fast this year. But I did try fasting before, those intermittent fasting. And I do find it really hard and challenging, and I become really hungry, and I just find it hard to do everything. Now you guys need to do it for a whole month, and I just wondered how you carry on, working during Ramadan, and how do you normally feel, and what should I consider if I work with colleagues and students who observe Ramadan?
Okay, so I'll start, yes.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to, it's very personal. Every person is different. With me, I find Ramadan extremely challenging. I moan a lot. I'm not a happy person at all. And I think for me, it is the sleep side of it, because the sleep disruption, I feel really sleepy. I think hunger is not an issue. It's the tiredness, it's the lethargy, probably because although you're not feeling hungry as in you're really hungry, but because you've not eaten, you feel really tired, sleepy, lethargic, especially you can't even drink as well. So that's the main, I think for me, that's really central. But as a colleague, just being mindful, that just being understanding towards if you know that your colleague is fasting, and I remember last year when I was in a meeting, I couldn't get my words, like I couldn't form sentences. And then they decided that, okay, I'll keep quiet and I'll just make notes, So something like this, when you know that your colleague is fasting, being more, understanding towards them, and perhaps they might not understand something which you're saying to them, and repeat or be patient with them would be the way forward, I guess.
Be patient with them, definitely. So even when I feel very exhausting and my brain couldn't function very well, so definitely, during Ramadan, if your colleagues are observing Ramadan, and I guess definitely be more understanding, yeah. And Nusrat, anything?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I worked on the wards for about 10 to 12 years, and it's really hard. You're walking around a lot. There's a lot of concentration. There's a lot of intensity. And often you have to start in the morning. And I'm not a morning person. So if you've woken up for the morning to then get up to go to work for the morning, it really doesn't work. So I'm probably not as moany as Fareeha. I'm quite a happy person. So I think usually no hungry I don't get, but it is the sleep and the lack of sleep. So I think for me, having like a regular nap, or having some time where I can just even rest, where I'm not, during the lunch, if you're not eating, at least to get a little bit of a rest. In terms of colleagues and what you can do, just being sensitive to people who are fasting, because you may not, I obviously look like I'm a Muslim, but there might be someone who actually doesn't look like they're Muslim and they're fasting. So just being open that people might be fasting that you might not be aware of. Sometimes people aren't very open about the fact that they're Muslim, and they might be. Otherwise, just being aware that if someone is fasting in the office, they may not be fasting, they may be Muslim, but they may not be fasting for other reasons that we've already talked about. So just being sensitive to that. And when I was working, always people be like, oh, sorry, you're fasting, I shouldn't eat in front of you. But that almost makes me feel bad, because then I don't, it's fine. I'm absolutely used to you eating and drinking. So it's more just if people keep asking me, like, do you want a drink? Oh, sorry, fasting. So actually, yeah, just being mindful if they just practice the week before, maybe not to offer a drink or offer a snack if they know their colleague's going to be fasting. And if they're going to eat and drink, just go ahead. You don't need to feel guilty. It's not a problem. Most of us have been fasting from a young age. It's just maybe being mindful not to have loads of beautiful snacks and cakes, maybe just that can go away. But if you're just having
Here's the
yourself,
temptation.
yeah, you don't need to be in my face with it, but yeah, carry on eating it, it's fine. And then, yeah, just if you feel your colleagues need some time or if they look a bit tired. For me, what worked really nicely was just having a flexibility of working. So often the department let me come in half an hour later and finish half an hour earlier. And that was useful when I was driving, because if I got stuck in traffic, it just, you're so tired and you're sleepy and it's just the worst thing ever. And then obviously if you've got a little bit of a flex in the morning where you can come in a bit later, for me, that worked really well. So I guess it's just speaking to your colleagues, and if you're a manager, thinking about what would work for them. Do you need breaks? And maybe meetings as well. It's common in dietetics to have lots of fuddles and get together. So maybe not have as many fuddles, or if there is meetings where they're around the lunchtime, try not to, because if people are going to be praying and trying to make sure they're doing that. So yeah, just having to think about those sorts of things from a manager. I think that's what would be important to me.
One of the things you just mentioned, I think is quite important, is, some colleagues who observe this faith, probably they aren't fasting for different reasons. And just because they are eating during Ramadan does not mean, they are not good sort of Muslims, or they are not observing these rules. And I think we need to respect that as well. And, because things you probably don't see of why they're not fasting, and they don't have to tell you, to be honest. And it's not really in your place to judge them whether or not they are fasting or not, but be understanding, definitely. And what about students then, Zaki and Manaal? If the students, they are doing university, but or on placement, what kind of things we need to know?
I think the main thing is, like everyone mentioned, was the tiredness. So kind of building around that is kind of managing your schedule, because you've got to study, you've got places to be, and also when you're a student, you're also thinking about, like, you're not with family sometimes, so you're living by yourself, and then kind of thinking about, how am I gonna make sure I have iftar if I'm break my fast if I'm going to be home? Do I need to meal prep? Things like that, and also finances. So there's a lot of things. And sometimes, as a student, you go and you have, especially dietetic students, you are, in the lab cooking food, or you have things to try. So I think in that sense, you kind of will miss out on things. But on the general side is thinking of, how should I best prepare myself so that I'm not, like, kind of, tired or not hungry, or like don't have anything to eat. I remember, like, in few years ago, like in my undergrad, I did my internship in Dubai just independently. And that was during a fast, during Ramadan. And they had me placed in the catering and the kitchen unit. And they were like, oh, you come on, try all the foods that we're giving to the patients, just like taste test. The dietitian and I were going around. But the fact that it was Dubai and they didn't kind of think of it, it was kind of surprising. But I was like, oh no, I can't sort of taste because I'm fasting. So that was kind of a bummer. But then kind of relating that event to, as a student in the UK, if you've got anything planned for students, workshops, things like that, it might kind of take that opportunity away from them to kind of be actively involved, I would say. But yeah. But
Yeah.
in Dubai, just to say that the working times are different. So, like, you'd have, office workers come in at least 1 to 2 hours early than they normally do, in schools half-time. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
helps.
definitely. And I also say Manaal is currently in Dubai, and it's broadcasting from Dubai, and we're fully international today, aren't we? And anything you'd like to add there, Zakia?
Yeah, so this one is a bit personal. So I have found that usually when I'm able to take the pre-dawn meal as a very balanced diet, I'm able to go through the day a bit not very tired, as compared to if I don't eat a very good diet for the pre-dawn meal. So yeah, it's just trying to plan ahead, get things, maybe your menus or your meal plans ahead of time, so that you can have a balanced diet. for
Mm.
the pre-dawn meal. It's usually, I find it very helpful to have that, and it helps throughout the day.
Mm.
So that's something that I found useful, especially during Ramadan, and having to combine it with my studies and also run a family. So
Yeah.
I usually have to plan way ahead to arrange meals to cater for myself as well.
So you almost need to be highly organized, basically, and plan your study, plan your meals. Don't skip any meal. That pre-dawn meal is very important. Don't skip it, and yeah, and be very organized, basically, with your study. Now, you guys mentioned a lot of food, from a food point of view, and obviously hydration is very important in the same time. So obviously we can't drink anything during the day. So how can we make sure we're better hydrated then during the day without drinking anything?
It is really hard. Then again, I keep going back to my clients and patients, the advice which I've been giving them. It's coming in my head now. But I think it's not easy. It's very hard. But just thinking that it's not just the water which is hydrating you. The important thing over here is, like, obviously if you're having juices, your fruit, even your vegetables, if you're having your lettuce and cucumbers, they will provide you with hydration. And Manal was talking about soups and all. So soup is something which can also hydrate you. So not just being focused on the water side of it, that, oh, I have to have this many glasses because I have to keep myself hydrated. As far as thinking that how I can manage my water intake, I was just explaining to one of my patients, like, for instance, if you're doing your suhoor, you wake up for your suhoor, you've put an alarm, 4 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever, put a glass of water next to your bed. The first thing you do is have that glass of water. Yeah. Then you go to the kitchen, you're preparing. In our case, we're preparing for our children, our husbands, and everyone. So it's like it takes ages. So if you're preparing, then again, during the preparation, you have that one more glass. Yeah. Then you have whatever you're eating. And then just before the adhan, you have your last third glass. So it is very difficult. You end up going to the loo again and again. So and also to make sure that not having all of it in one go and taking small sips, and there's not much time as well to have it in such slow speed. But this is the pattern which I always explain, and this is how you can get 3 glasses in at suhoor. And of course, after iftar, it's having that small sips before till you sleep, and making sure that you get 3 glasses, at least 3 glasses in. So at least you know that you've got 3 in the morning, 3 after your iftar. And then, of course, thinking about the fruit, the vegetables, the soup, and the stews. Like in the Pakistani community, we make a lot of shorbas. Shorbas is sort of a stew. So that has water in it. So again, that will also make up for for not just the water.
Yeah, make sure that fruit, vegetables, water, and all sort of foods that contains good fluid content in it, that all contribute to it. Anything else any of you would like to add to this one?
I think also avoiding the caffeine-based drinks such as tea, coffee, and cola, because caffeine is a diuretic and it stimulates faster water loss through urination. So rather than having to take these fluids, which would make you urinate a lot, rather avoiding them or taking limited amounts of it would go a long way to keep one hydrated.
Definitely.
Especially during the month of summer.
Yeah. Pay attention to the caffeine intake, because that can act as diuretics, makes you more dehydrated. And Nusrat?
Yeah, same. And then, in the Asian culture, particularly Southeast Asian, we drink a lot of sugary drinks. And again, they're never helpful. So again, just trying to drink water. And if it is a really warm country and you're drinking there, I mean, obviously we're in the winter in the England, so it's all right. But maybe adding a bit of salts and electrolytes to foods, which you can get obviously from all the foods already talked about. Especially soups and foods. But it might be that sometimes if you've been quite active, or if you are doing a bit more sports or something during the day, then at least if you've added those electrolytes and salts, you're going to make sure to not have any issues and dehydrate.
Okay. And you mentioned that's right, about people who do sports and adding extra electrolytes. And so my question is, for people who are very active or who do a lot of physical activity during the day, should they stop during Ramadan, or should they carry on? What should they do?
So I guess it depends. I guess if it's like an elite athlete, they're probably not going to want to slow their training down. And I think from studies I've seen in the past, if you're an elite athlete, it's unlikely that you're going to gain muscle or gain too much, but you will maintain. So because they're still eating. So I think it's about making sure you do have, as discussed, like the sahur meal, making sure that's balanced and healthy. So I know we've not really talked about food as much, but ideally a really healthy meal would have the proteins in, would have some vegetables, salads, and whole grain, slow releasing carbohydrates in the meal. So sort of a quarter portion. So that, and then as an athlete, you may want to make sure you definitely have your iftar meal, and then you may end up having either one or two smaller snack meals before the next, so in the non-fasting period after iftar, so the evening till late. And often people will read an evening prayer, which is quite long, so again they can drink plenty there, or have protein and snacks. And if they want like a milkshake drink or something protein based, which is milk, you know, it's often easier to drink liquids in Ramadan. So just making sure they're getting in those 3 or 4 meals and getting in their protein and carbohydrates in those additional times that they can eat. So it's thinking about that evening window, which sometimes does impact on sleep, because it might mean you're up till a bit later and then you're up again. So then it might be, if they're an athlete and they're training and they're doing a lot, they may need to have time in their day to rest and nap. If you're just the general healthy individuals, I mean, any of us, probably if you were I work from home now, so I do sit more, but if you were walking around and doing lots of activity, hopefully if that's your normal part of your day, your body will have adjusted. So I would say, if anything you would normally do that you're happy to keep going. But if it does, if it's quite intense and you're doing lots of training, you may want to wait till either just after you've eaten or first thing in the morning just after you've eaten. So you may want to shift the timings of the training or exercise you do. I still go to my sort of evening games and stuff because it's usually after I've eaten and I'm feeling quite energetic. But yeah, everyone's different. But yeah, it's about just maybe moving some of those fluids and foods and making sure you're still getting them in the period where you're not eating. Anyone think anything different or do anything different while I eat?
Yeah, and
I personally, oh, I was just gonna say, I just carry a water bottle. I think that is just handy because when you go outside, whether you're for prayers or you have like an activity post iftar, you don't want to be in a position where you don't have water and you're just like, wait, I'll just get home and I'll have water sort of situation. So just carrying like a water bottle with you, that just encourages you to have the amount that you keep in it, and then just meet that requirement for water intake.
but you can only drink during your in the evening. Is that right? Yeah. Anything anyone else would like to add?
The only thing which I would add to this is really well explained by Nusrat and Manaal, is that it all comes down to planning.
Yeah.
Plan it well. If you decide, and I think if writing it down or making a diary of it, if that works for you, do that and then follow that, and then you can easily do it. It won't be a problem.
Again, organizational skills, everybody. It's very important for Ramadan as well. It's important for everything. But for Ramadan, you have to plan quite a lot of things, especially to say, and Zakia, you've got a very busy family, don't you? So you have to plan because some of your children are not fasting, and then for some, and your husband is fasting, and some of your children are fasting. So you have to sort of adapt to what they are doing, and you have to cook for them. You have to do all type of things for them. So I think that's have to be very, very, very busy. I can't imagine of how busy you are during Ramadan time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We actually have mentioned about medical issues earlier on because you mentioned about diabetes, people who are in the hospital, and obviously people who are exempt from fasting, such as pregnant women who are breastfeeding, and the elderly, and people who have acute unwellness, and people who are traveling long distance. I just want to ask about, in a more structured way or in a summary, what are the fasting recommendations for people who have medical issues, such as those acute illness, diabetes, renal issues, or mental health issues you've mentioned, such as the eating disorder you mentioned, Fareeha, earlier on? And are there any potential health risks associated with fasting during Ramadan? And how can this be minimized?
So of course there are risks, aren't there? If someone's got diabetes, they can get, and depends on the medication as well. And that's why Nusrat said that before, if you've got diabetes or any other health condition, it will be wise for you to speak to your healthcare professionals, to speak to your team. You might go ahead with your fasts, but probably they would tweak your medications and according to your routine. But when you say that if they're exempt, if for example someone with diabetes or is on insulin and there is no adjustments can be made, and that person cannot fast, so that is the exemption. And for this person, because it's something which is for life, perhaps it's a chronic thing which will be happening for life, they are exempt for life, and they're supposed to give something which is called fidya. Fidya is amount of money where you're feeding someone else, someone who cannot afford to have their food. So for every day you're giving that amount and to be honest, I calculated for my mother and it's not a lot, and you're giving that amount of money and you're feeding another person. Here I would like to differentiate between two things over here. So for women who are breastfeeding, or women on their menstrual cycle, or pregnant women, this is not something chronic. Once it's done, it's done. So for them, they have to fast. If they can't get away with it, they can give fidya, but it's not that, oh, fidya is given, so I'm not going to fast. So those fasts which they have missed, they have to fast they have to choose any days in the rest of the year, and they have to make up for that. But for those people who have got health conditions, they can get away with it for life. Someone with renal conditions, they can get really sick, really poorly, end up in the hospital. So there's no point. Someone with eating disorders, which I already mentioned, we don't know what stage they are. And if they're in the recovery stage, what if they slip back, they go back to their condition back again, because this is the best opportunity. They're not eating. This is what they want, don't they? Or during when they're opening up their fast, this is the time to binge whatever they've been eating. So it depends on what category of eating disorders they are on. So of course, there are risks to it, and of course there is this. They can get away with it if they don't have to fast.
So working with the healthcare professionals is very important if they have, and I guess chaplain as well, and so in the hospital or at university or in the community, it's always sort of really religious leaders, and to ask for their opinions, I guess, is quite important. And I've actually learned something new from you, Fareeha. You mentioned about, if it's chronic or if it's just one-off and it's different. So whether you donate the money or whether you make up the days at the rest of the year. And yeah, that's very interesting. That's what did you want to say?
If you're traveling, like when Zakia mentioned about traveling, you have to make up for them.
Okay.
If you're running temperature that day, you're fine, you're not fasting. But then later on, you have to make up
You
for
have to make it up. Yeah, you're not getting away with it. Yeah.
I was just going to add about the diabetes patients, because I guess that's my sort of special interest. But if you type 1 or type 2, the risks of fasting obviously might depend on any of the macro issues you may have. So it might put you at risk. And then generally for type 1 and type 2, it'll be the hypos if they've either taken too much medications or not adjusted the medications to suit, or it might be hyperglycemia, obviously, if they're having high meals. So either one can put them at risk of being at risk of illness or needing to break their fast. So that's why it's really important, if someone does have diabetes, to really have a conversation a good 3 to 6 months with their healthcare professionals before, so they can sort of have that conversation and make adjustments and changes if needed. So often, January or December, 3 or 4 months before, in primary care, secondary care, doctors will start speaking to patients. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes people get missed. So if you know people with type 2 diabetes or type 1 that haven't spoken to a healthcare professional, it's worth getting them to speak to them, adjusting those medications, because they can be at risk. And then that would mean they'd have to break their fast, and breaking their fast is not nice, because then that has implications as well. Again, they would have to make up for that because you've broken the fast. So again, just as there's rules regarding making up fast, you'd have to make up fast for that as well. So and then interesting, we've not covered it, but often as part of Ramadan, it's a month of giving as well. So often a lot of people will give their so as part of the 5 pillars of Islam, there's something called zakat, which is giving money to the poor and feeding the poor and needy. So often in Ramadan, a lot of Muslims will give their donations for the year for that. So, and it's a significant amount, I think, gets given in Ramadan. So it's a month for reflection, but also giving. And as we've mentioned before about that, so I just thought I'd add that in there.
Yeah, definitely. It's so helpful. And I guess obviously if you think of Ramadan, obviously you don't eat anything during the day, and that's essentially intermittent fasting, isn't it? And so my question for you guys is, do you guys lose weight during Ramadan because of this intermittent fasting? Given how popular it is, and everybody say you can lose weight on intermittent fasting. So I just wonder if you guys would lose weight.
So I do. I always do. But then again, if you look at studies and researches, you'll find that, yes, people do lose weight. And you have seen studies that the lipid profiles also improve for some people. But they go back again. That's another story. But many people will gain weight as well. Because, you know, because it's the celebratory meal. Every day you're having a celebratory meal. So it's not the weekend. So every evening you've got these, which we already talked about. We've got these fried foods and these high sugary and high fatty foods. So many people end up, and there's limited exercise as well, limited movement. Most of the people don't move, don't exercise. So again, as we said, some people may lose weight, but some may gain weight as well.
Yeah. So it all depends on what you eat during the non-fasting period. And I think that's probably exactly and you mentioned also people go back to their weight, and usually because they go back to their usual diet once they Ramadan finishes. And I did see a systematic review previously that just demonstrated exactly the results. People do lose weight, but then they put weight back on afterwards. So it depends on what you eat during the non-fasting period, and also of the I guess you can still having a healthy diet, can't you? During the Ramadan. I think that's education is very important there. And that's why, did you want to say something just now?
No, I was just going to generally, because I feel like type 2 diabetes is my little area at the moment. But yeah, fasting officially, like 9 to 10 hours is where your body glycogen stores in the liver would get used up. So that's when you're starting to you start burning the stored fat around the 12 hours, depending, you know, how much of an athlete you are. If you're an athlete, you may burn. So these fasts that we started, you only start burning fat at 12 hours, but we open our fast in 12 hours. So, you know, you might only be burning for about 10 minutes before we eat a meal. So the longer fast in summer is where I lose more weight. In the winter, I don't really lose weight, and I'm more active, I guess, in that time. So the 16-hour ones or longer when they're in the summer in England tend to be where people do tend to lose weight because they're longer. And I guess if you miss sahur and your last meal was 8 hours before, then you're more likely to sort of burn fat for longer. So in essence, if you have missed sahur for some reason, you're probably likely to lose a bit more weight, depending how you're eating, obviously, either side. But that's why it's really important for people to do eat sahur, because I guess the aim isn't to try and lose weight. But I guess if people were planning to lose weight, they could use a little bit of that and just make sure they look at their meals and think about it from a healthy eating perspective. But that's never really the point of Ramadan, but it might get them started.
No. Absolutely. And what was I going to say? So obviously I actually have been wanting to try to do Ramadan, not from a religious point of view, but to try those fasting. And I know there's NHS fasting challenge for Ramadan, and that's what I think you had this resource before. Where would you like to share with us of that one? Do you
want me to just add it in the chat? I'll send it around.
Could do, so everybody
and there's a really nice resource if no one's seen it, or if people want to use it just for educating patients or in general. It's the IDF Ramadan guidelines. It's really, really useful for patients, and they've got some really nice meal plans and meal ideas of really healthy eating. And they've also got an app for healthcare professionals, but an app for patients. Like, I find it really useful. I always download it every Ramadan and have a good read. Like, it's a really long document, but they've also got like a shortened chapter. So it's IDF. I always forget. I think it's International Diabetes Federation.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll share this one as well from the NHS. I'll pop it in the chat.
Yeah, and I can't believe that time has gone so fast, and it's already 1 hour, and we're actually concluding this or finishing this chat very soon. And obviously, we couldn't really cover everything during this hour because there's so much to talk. Now, if people wanted to read more, seeking guidance on dietary practices during this time, where can they find or which resources are available? And Nasra, thank you so much because you just shared some of the resources for us. And I don't know if any of you would like to share any other resource that people may find useful.
I think what Nusrat has shared is brilliant. It's amazing. And apart from that, if you go to British Dietetic Association, they have done different blogs on it. If you go to British Nutrition Foundation, they have got quite a lot on it. Even the Diabetes UK have got for people with diabetes, or if you know, there's so much online. For British Heart Foundation have done a lot of stuff on it. So yeah, there's quite a lot there.
Excellent. Okay, so and I think with the internet being so informative, and you can find very useful information, but do make sure that it's from a credible resource such as either the NHS or the British Dietetic Association, and another. I think you do need to have a critical mind, don't you? And if you're not sure, always check with your GP or with your healthcare professionals and that work with you. Okay. And yeah, so I can't believe it's the end of this chat. Any final advice for nutrition and dietetic professionals from you guys? Anything you'd like to share?
I think in terms of like, just because we were discussing being organized and also not trying to overeat, just in terms of like Ramadan and food in general, I think it's important to like plan ahead of what you're gonna do after your iftar, because a lot of people just have food in front of them and that's all they have. So it's thinking about like not putting all of the dishes out at once, so that you might be tempted to take things from the table. And if you have activities planned in between, so like the prayer, so we've got that evening prayer, and then we've got the long prayers. If not, if you're not doing prayers, you could just have some, you know, reading the Quran time. So you're just doing things that are outside of eating that just makes you not overeat and also kind of get the benefit of observing Ramadan in that sense. I just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else from any of you guys? No, okay. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining this live chat, and thank you so much to our panel who really you contribute their time to this chat. They're not getting paid, everybody, so they're just volunteering for this chat, and I cannot be grateful enough for their input. And thank you so much. And so this live chat will be available on our YouTube channel and at Shoe Dietetics soon after this chat. And if you have any questions, you can also follow us on at Shoe Dietetics on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Twitter. It's at Dietetics Shoe. Where can people find you, Fareeha, on social media?
So yes, you can find me. Just type in my name, Fareeha J. So you'll find me on Instagram, you'll find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube as well.
So you're basically everywhere. Like I'm trying to mimic Fareeha, really, her successful career. And Nusrat?
And similar, but I'm not on TikTok. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Yeah, Nusrat, KRD.
Nusrat, KRD. And Manaal and Zakia, do you have anything on social media at the moment? Or do you plan to?
I've planned to, but at the moment it's kind of like private and just kind of building on. So we'll see where that goes.
We'll wait and see. Stay tuned, everybody. And Zakia?
Yeah, same here. Still trying to build it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so we'll wait and see. And thank you so much, everybody, and have a nice evening. Goodbye. Bye-bye.